Hello everybody. Today I am going to talk about why consuming lots of beef can tank your testosterone or give you the hormonal profile of a transgender if that is what you are looking for. Now, when I first made my YouTube channel, I had no intent on ridiculing the carnivore cult to the extent that I am now, but I find them to be such a repulsive group of people, I simply cannot help myself. But anyway, let's get into the 4 reasons why eating a lot of conventional beef will give you the hormonal profile of a transgender. The first reason is because 97% of the beef or the cattle in the United States are inoculated with synthetic hormones. And much of that is exported internationally to the rest of the world. The United States is an agricultural powerhouse. These synthetic hormones are in the form of a pellet, most often testosterone, estrogen, or trenbolone, and they insert these pellets just behind the ear under the skin of the cattle. And it's a pellet that dissolves slowly over time, releasing these synthetic hormones into the cattle for the purpose of increasing them in size and weight. And the justification for this is a larger return on investment. Now, there's a paper from the Annals of Oncology correlating the increase of hormone-dependent cancers to parallels in the increased consumption of beef in Japan that was imported from the United States. Now, some facts from the paper: there has been a multi-fold increase in cancers such as breast, ovarian, endometrial, and prostate cancers, all which are hormone related. And 25% of the beef in Japan is imported from the United States. As of 1997, 97% of beef in the United States was inoculated with these synthetic hormones. 97%. I don't know what the number is today, but I know it's close to the same amount. I myself am a regenerative farmer. I've worked on regenerative farms. I've designed many regenerative farms. We don't inoculate our animals with these synthetic hormones. However, these small types of family or multi-family farms do not have the capacity to produce enough meat on a national level, not even on a county level, really. They can only supply enough meat for local communities, and they sell that at farmers markets. So majority of the time, the meat that you're going to be buying at a grocer, especially in the United States and Canada, it's going to be from these conventional feedlots which have had synthetic hormones inoculated into them. Now, the paper goes on, and the researchers for this paper evaluated the levels of estradiol and estrone in the United States beef fat. And they tested beef fat from different markets at different times so that they would avoid testing the same batch of beef. And what they found was that the USA beef contained 140 times more estradiol and 11 times more estrone than Japanese beef. So the fat had literally 11 and 140 times more synthetic estrogen derivatives than normal beef in Japan. This is significant, and this is causing hormonal dysregulation, hormonal cancers. It's one of the factors. It's not the only factors. There are perhaps hundreds of factors, but this is a primary one, especially if you're eating a lot of beef. And that was the fat. And you would think that the majority of these synthetic derivatives would be only in the fat and not the lean tissue. If you're an academic mutant who doesn't have common sense, you would argue that all of it is excreted in the urine and manure, and we are humans, that has no biological effect on us. This is academic mutants. This is their way of thinking. You can't trust these people. They have no common sense. They're mentally ill. Now, the paper goes on and then studied the lean meat, the red meat, the flesh of the cows, and found that the estradiol was 600 times higher, and the estrone again was 11 times higher than Japanese beef. So again, you would think that majority of these synthetic estrogen or hormonal derivatives would be only in the fat and not the lean tissue. But when they studied the lean tissues, they found that the lean tissue actually stored 600 times more synthetic estrogen than what you would normally find in Japanese beef, such as Wagyu beef, who are not inoculated with this Frankenstein hormone. Now, look at the conclusion of the paper. Accordingly, it is our intuitive feeling that the increasing consumption of estrogen-rich beef following steroid implantation might facilitate estrogen accumulation in the human body and could be related to the incidence of hormone-dependent cancers. So this is significant. Now, of course, the academic mutants who have adderalized their brain and cannot really use reason, intuition, common sense, they will tell you it has no biological effect on human beings, but you can't trust these people. Their brains are deranged. They're not thinking properly. They're academic mutants. Now, the academic mutants will argue that the majority of these hormones are excreted in the manure and urine and that it would have no effect on human biology or human physiology. That's obviously not the case. I've shown the paper that it's still present in the tissues and the fat and protein tissues of these cows. But further on, there's also papers showing that when these cows have their urine and manure washed off into rivers and streams, the bioaccumulation of these synthetic estrogens in their waste product in these streams cause sex changes in fish. And it's not only the synthetic estrogen from their manure that's causing this, of course. It's pesticides, it's the glyphosate, it's the atrazine, heavy metals. I mean, there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of pollutants in the environment which are deranging the hormonal profiles of all biological species. But this is a huge one, the synthetic hormones, which are inoculated in these feedlot cattle. So for man, what this equates to, understand this, these young children, these young boys who are born today to hormonally depleted mothers and who they themselves are hormonally depleted, they feel like women or girls, and in order to transition to the gender which they think they are, they take synthetic estrogen therapy. This is what they put these little boys on today. And when you're eating a lot of beef that's not organic, pasture raised, produced by a family farm, okay, you're inoculating yourself with hundreds of times more estrogen than you would normally accumulate or absorb from your environment, from a normal, healthy cow. And you're basically putting yourself on feminine therapy. You're feminizing yourself. And of course, the opposite is true for females as well. It's masculinating them. It's making them more masculine. It's removing their feminine qualities. And this is one of the reasons why we see all this stuff that's happening today. And, you know, I can't say too much because, well, you know, they ban you for talking about this kind of stuff. Now, here's a quote from this paper. Quote, "At very low levels, trenbolone acetate has been documented to cause partial or incomplete sex reversals in fish and to alter their endocrine system." So again, these hormones are causing sex changes in fish. It's altering their endocrine system, right? These hormones from the manure and urine of these cattle, which find their way into the rivers and streams, cause sex changes in fish. But you are eating it directly from the source. It's concentrated in the tissue and the fat, and you're consuming that. So if you're feeling fatigued or tired on a carnivore diet, or you're not feeling right, this might be the reason why. Let's move on further to reason number 2. A lot of these feedlot animals, 70% of them, come from, at the end of their life, they are concentrated on commercial feedlot operations where they are fed all kinds of crazy stuff. And because those environments breed disease, there's a necessitation to vaccinate these animals. And they get dozens of these vaccines. And again, this stuff concentrates in the tissue, in the protein and fat, and then you consume it. And as for this matter, I cannot comment on it much further for obvious reasons, because we are living in a very dystopian time right now. There's not much that I can say. There's a lot more I want to say on this channel, but I can't get into it for obvious reasons. But again, the vaccines, they inoculate these animals with a lot of vaccines. Some are necessary, some are not. And they're only necessary because they are being bred in environments, conditions which breed disease. And so most of these animals, by the time they reach the slaughterhouse, they are very sick. They're very sick, and they're fed antibiotics, they're given the vaccines, and they're given the synthetic hormones, and then you consume that stuff. And you say, hurrah, we found the pinnacle of health on the carnivore diet. Sure. Let's move on to reason number 3. It is entirely legal to feed these commercial cattle, which is again about 90%, 95% of the beef out there, to feed them bakery waste, plastic, cardboard, and waste from several different industries. And it's even worse for pork. If you're consuming conventional pork, my God, you are in like a total different realm. It's a demonic realm what they're feeding these animals. And again, all this stuff, the plastics which they are fed, the cardboard, it's legal to feed them expired Halloween candy that are still in the wrapper. Look at this video. It's right there in front of everybody to see. These cattle and these pork get fed industrial waste. And these animals, these cow and these pig, they cannot sweat the way human beings do. So they concentrate all of this environmental estrogen, all of these plastics, all of these cardboards, all of these vegetable oils, all of these food preservatives and chemicals in their fatty tissue and in their lean tissue. I personally didn't know that they concentrated in the lean tissue until just recently. But it's all concentrated in there. And then when you consume your steak from these conventional feedlot operations, you get a bolus dose of environmental toxicity. You feel great because your digestive system may be screwed up and you cannot tolerate any plants or carbohydrates, and thus you take a non-fiber food such as meat, which has no irritation on the digestive lining, and you say, well, my autoimmune symptoms went into remission. Sure, of course, great. But as this food dissolves into your bloodstream and into your lacteal system, this food, as it dissolves, with it, you get the synthetic hormones, the estrogen, the plastic, the cardboard, the antibiotics, the vaccines, etc., etc. And this, because we've been consuming this stuff for decades, this is why the children today are the way that they are, and it's why they're so gullible. Now, this is why a lot of these kids are this way today. These poor children, they're gullible, and the state inoculates them with these perverted ideas in the educational curriculum now because they are so weak. Their parents and grandparents have been eating this shit for generations. Raw milk and raw liver used to be staples in the American diet 100 years ago, and that was all weaned out for these modern pseudo foods and for these commercial feedlot beef, which has all of this crap inside of it. And you finally have this third generation of children, which I correlate to Dr. Pottinger's third generation of cooked cats. Basically, they're so sick and malnourished and toxic from all these environmental pollutants that a 5, 6, 7-year-old boy does not necessarily feel like a boy. And if you tell him, hey, you're a girl, he may actually believe you. And it's because all of this stuff is in his bloodstream. His glands are screwed up. And of course, there is an agenda behind all of this. And I will not get into that further in this video, maybe in future videos. Let's move on past this, and let's go to the fourth and final reason. And the fourth reason is really just a summation of everything that I have just discussed. Aside from the synthetic hormones they inoculate in these animals, aside from the bakery waste and the plastic that they feed them, the glyphosate grains, etc., aside from the vaccines and the diseased environment which these cattle all end up in towards the end of their lives, yes, they all are grass-fed to an extent, but towards the end of their life, they go to these feedlot operations and they receive the whole program. Aside from all of this stuff, there are perhaps millions of different environmental pollutants in the environment today, and it's the primary factor for the massive species die-off which is occurring globally. For example, the monarch butterflies have pretty much gone extinct or are endangered. The bees are dying and have gone extinct or are endangered, and there are many different wild species like this that are dying off. And of course, the pinnacle of all this is the huge infertility crisis or dropping sperm count amongst men today. And the human population itself is going to go extinct. It's going to take another decade or two, but we are marching down that road. And again, the primary factor for all of this is because the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe is just saturated with a cocktail of environmental pollutants, which are a result of our industries. And these things, these millions of environmental pollutants bioaccumulate in the food chain. So if, for example, in the ocean, you may have it concentrate in algae, But then when the fish eat those algae, it bioaccumulates in the fish. And then when the larger fish or shark eats the smaller fish, it bioaccumulates in that to a greater extent. And then of course it accumulates even greater in whales and so on, because they live longer and have much more time to bioaccumulate all of these pollutants. And this is one of the primary reasons for the mass whale die-offs we have been seeing over the past decade or two. And there are tests done which, when they test the fat samples of these massive whales which beach themselves and die off, they find almost every single environmental pollutant that they can test for in the tissues of these animals. A correlate to this in humans is that when the umbilical cords of mothers are tested, they also find almost each and every single environmental pollutant that they test for, and all of these pollutants are deemed carcinogens, meaning they can cause cancer. And of course, they also will cause endocrine disruption and hormonal dysregulation. So, in summation here, aside from all the stuff that is being given deliberately to the animals, these beef, these cows, they bioaccumulate all this stuff from the environment as well, and then you get that in a bolus dose when you have your even grass-fed steak. And I'm not saying don't eat meat or don't eat grass-fed steaks. It's just a problem we have to confront in the modern world, and it's not as simple as, oh, just eat meat and drink coffee. Although, you know, for some that's okay. I'm not a vegan. I've written a book about the vegan agenda exposed. I'm just giving you guys objective truth. And if it makes you uncomfortable, well, it makes you uncomfortable. It's not my fault. And perhaps you should go to other channels which just tell you to, they parrot the same bullshit over and over again. Eat beef, eat beef, eat beef, and drink coffee. Enjoy. And a final thing to note here, I understand not everybody is going to want to or needs to pursue higher levels of health. And I'll get into some theism here, some theology. The caste system is a natural system that is perennial and universal across time and space. Every single traditional civilization and culture around the planet had their society divided into a hierarchical organization of caste. And there were multiple things which differentiated one caste from the next, but health was without a doubt one of them. Not everybody's going to reach the pinnacle of health, and health is an integral part of our spiritual and physical development. There are certain people who are meant to consume grains. They're meant to consume this shit beef and live the ordinary life which nature has ordained for them, because they're mechanical, they're automatons, they belong to nature. But yet there are others who do not belong to nature but belong to the transcendental power of the universe, and a part of your blossoming and spiritual purpose here in life is to attain higher levels of health, higher levels of brain development that is not only dependent on nutrition, but various types of yogas, tai chis, meditations, etc., which will develop and blossom your full physical and spiritual potential. And this really goes beyond health, but health is the foundation of it. And the fact of the matter is, guys, is that these hormones in this beef is really going to derail the process. So my advice is really try to source the best that you can. There's a lot of health food markets out there, and they'll state that the beef has not been fed antibiotics or growth hormones. You'll be fine there. Consume that beef. And most often I do advise people, if they can, to limit the beef and instead consume a lot more chicken. Ironically, chicken in the United States is not inoculated with these same synthetic hormones. So you're kind of safe there. The chicken also bioaccumulates a lot less environmental pollutants. It still bioaccumulates them to an extent, but not as much as beef. All right, guys. Hope you found this helpful. Like and leave your comments below. Thank you and have a wonderful day.